Welcome back to Lecture 1.2. In the last time that we talked, I gave you an overview of the course, and now that you're working your way through Module 1, uh, we're at the point where really need to talk about how is the course put together? What is the modular design, and what do we mean by mastery testing? And I hope this will help you out as we go through. So the first thing to recognize is that the design of the online course is in modules, and that we've got a number of modules going on. There's going to be 12 chapter-based quizzes and 3 evidence and economics sections. I think of those are writing assignments. And the modules are completed in order. Succeeding on one module brings up the next one, and difficulty on a module is going to require some intervention. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. We're using a mastery-based testing and learning pedagogy, which is the fundamental difference between this course and I dare say every other online course that you have. Uh, and it's also why there are weekly milestones to complete. That is something due every Tuesday. Now, here's kind of a breakdown. It's kind of busy. You can pause the screen and read it if you want, but it's the same thing in the syllabus. There's 12 quiz-based modules, and there's the numbers. They're all numbered. They're not in order. There's no module 5. There's no module 10, because those have been eliminated over time, and I just didn't want to reprogram everything, right? So just pay attention to what the schedule says, and that's the next module coming up. Now, each of these quiz-based modules get you up to 10 points, and that's 120 points on this. So you're going to be reading stuff, studying it, working through it, doing whatever you need to do to get ready for the quiz. And then you're going to take a quiz. There's only 10 questions, and you have to score well or you cannot move on. Now, there's 3 writing assignments. The first is Module 2A, which is going to be on economics in one lesson. That's a written essay. That's due the second Tuesday of the week, which is, I think, the day after Labor Day. So that's when that's due. Module 7A is a interesting thing. We'll talk about that as we get to it, but that's more like our midterm, right in the middle. There is quizzes there, but oddly enough, you'll take the quizzes before you study, and then you'll study about why your answers are what they are. And again, much more about that when we get there. Many students say that's their favorite part of the course. And then the final writing assignment, Module 15A, is a written analytical project, which you're going to have up to 5 weeks to complete, and it's worth 20 points in the end. And I like getting data, so I want your evaluations and I'm willing to pay you for them. So no matter what you tell me at the end of the course, if you do all 3 evaluations, yeah, there's 3, sorry about that, you get 10 points. So it's worth it to go through those and get those done. Now, the modules are progressively revealed. You're going to first do Module 1, and then you're doing 2A and then 2B. The modules that have A on them are the writing assignments that do not have a quiz. The modules, which are whole numbers, all have a quiz except for Module 1. There's no quiz in Module 1. There's a learning assessment required in every single module except the writing assignments. So the completion there is simply doing the writing assignments. Now, what does each module look like? And I'm talking about only the quiz-based modules now. You're going to go through the content, as I showed you in the first video, and you're going to find an introduction to the module and some information, and you're going to have a chapter content, chapter enhancements, and then you're going to say, hey, is there another chapter in this module? In most cases, there are 2 or more chapters, so yes, you go back up, repeat it, and at the end, you take a module quiz of 10 questions. Modules up through 9 are our microeconomics modules, and modules 11 through 15 are on macroeconomics. Now, in the quiz-based modules, you're going to get a score out of 10. And we're going to start here, take the quiz, and we're going to say after each time, is your score a 10? If it is a 10, yes. Now it's time for you to complete the module evaluation, or what we've been calling the learning assessment. And you're done, and you move on to the next module. If the score on your first attempt is not a 10, even if it's a 9, we're going to ask, is this the third and last attempt? And if it is, then of course you've got to be done at that point, because you only get 3 attempts at each quiz. And people think, wow, I get 3 attempts, I can just take 3 shots. And the answer is no, that's not how this works. And if you do that, you're going to get yourself in a world of hurt. What you're going to do is you're going to say, well, I got a 10. No, that wasn't my third attempt, so we're going to take the quiz again. And I'm going to talk about how that process ought to take place in a moment. But for right now, and by the way, all the quizzes are 15 minutes, and the questions are a combination of recognition questions. That's like if you read the book, you probably got the answer, or if you saw the PowerPoints, you probably got the answer. A conceptual question, which generally has one logical step that you have to make in order to answer the question, and then an analytic question, which is much deeper, many more steps. It might be 2 or more steps in order to get the answer. And when you want to know what's in a module, there's a menu item that says what's in each quiz. Go to it and you will see that for every module, this being module 2, and by 2 I mean 2B, is going to be all of the questions and what their level of difficulty is. An R is recognition and recall. A C, which you see most of these are complex or conceptual, we called them in the last screen. I don't know why I changed that language. Or A, which is going to be analytical. Again, analytical is a problem that requires multiple steps and layers of applied knowledge to get there. Well, Module 2 is a pretty basic chapter. There are no analytic questions. That's not true about Module 3 and 4. They have more analytic questions than many of the others. But you can see what the learning objective is here. So in taking this quiz, let's say that you scored pretty good, you got a 7, and you think, well, that's all right, I'm okay with a 7. Well, I'm not. I want you to get a 10. That's the point of a mastery level course. So you have missed 3 questions. Let's just say it was the last 3. So we look at the one of them, and it says, learning objective is explain how current production choices expand future production possibilities. Well, where in the text or in the PowerPoints was that talked about? Go back and look at that. You've taken a quiz, now do some important study to figure out what that is. Now, there's another menu item which is called how hard is each quiz? And this just goes through and says how many recognition and recall questions are there, how many complex, I misspelled that, questions are there, and how many analytic questions are there. And I score those with just some weights here, right? And I give a raw score so I can say how difficult, meaning a complex analytic or an analytic question is going to be harder to accomplish than a complex question. It's going to be harder to accomplish than a recognition and recall. So here's our difficulty scale. And you can see that Module 15 and Module 2 are the 2 easiest you're going to have. But where are the really tough ones? Module 3, 4, and 7. And we're going to really do a lot of analytic work at the very beginning. And I'll tell you right now, Module 3 is where we talk about supply and demand. What is economics? It's supply and demand. And I guarantee you it's more complex than you think. Now, how do you succeed? You begin the content module, you work your way through by studying. And then you take a test. And then you study again. And what do you study? You do a focused study on the questions you missed. You can always go back to every quiz you take in this course and see the questions that you took, the answers that you chose, and whether they were correct or not. So you go back and you find out what you missed. All right. Now, after you've done that study, you then and only then take test two. And then you find out what you missed there. Maybe you didn't miss three this time, you missed only two. Well, now go back and focus your study there and finish up with your test three. And of course, at that point, you're done because that's all you get, and you complete your learning assessment. Now, what happens at this point? You've completed your learning assessment. That means you've emailed me that Microsoft Word fillable form, and you've made your thinking reflections about this module, what you learned, what you didn't learn, what was your complex things here, and so forth. Occasionally, I may ask a very pointed or specific question. It is our way of touching base at the end of the module, and I can then take a look at that and say, hey, I think maybe we ought to do something, an intervention style. And I will be very interventionist in the early modules. I really don't want you scoring under a 10, because if you don't grasp the first few modules, you will have tough time this entire semester. So I'd rather you pay the pain up front, learn that material, even if it means having to go back and do it. So all of you saw that 1 week quote grace period. That's not for you, that's for me, because you finish on Tuesday, you do your learning assessment, or earlier. By the way, you can accelerate the course. You cannot lag the course. So you submit your learning assessment. I take a look at it and I go, oh, geez, no, we've got a real problem here. I can see from what you missed that you can't yet master this particular thing. And we'll talk about that. We'll have some kind of an intervention. And in the rarest occasion, I might give you a fourth attempt after you do some work for me. And that way you can bring that score up. But more importantly, it's not, for me, it's not about the grades. I know it is for you, but for me, it's the learning. And if you can spend a little time, a little effort, yeah, you got behind, you had a bad score, it's going to cost you something in terms of time, but maybe you do better, and that means you do better on the next module. Warning, if we do this with you and you take a fourth attempt, or you have to do some focus study, or you have to do some analysis of your work, which I will require, that cuts into the time to study for the next module. It is not free time. If you get 3 or 4 days of work after your test, that next module is coming up in 3 days. So you've got to stay on this course and even ahead of this course. Now, some students insist on taking the test back to back. If indeed, and here's an actual record, if indeed this is testing appropriately and it's really getting at what you know, and every single question was designed with not only that level of difficulty we talked about, but whether it was a question on that learning objective. So what does the student do? Takes the test 3 times, no minutes between attempt 1 and 2, 3 minutes between attempt 3. It means they didn't even open up to see what they missed. They just took another shot. And what did they do? They missed question 6 and they missed question 10 all 3 times. That's predictable. Don't do this. It is a losing proposition, and it won't help you learn, and it will just irritate me. So depending upon how you feel about that, try it. But I don't approve of it. I don't like it. And if you do it over and over, don't look to me for help, because you're announcing you don't care. So if you take your test back to back, and you see you missed 6 and 10, and you go look up in that link, what did I miss? There's what you missed. It tells you what is in my quiz, and it says question 6 is define, calculate, and explain the factors that influence the price elasticity of demand. You do not know that because you missed it 3 times in a row. You've got to know that if you want to move forward. Now, most successful strategy is between the tests, review the test, learn from your mistakes, focus study on what you missed, and do it again. The expectation I want to see is your third test outscores your second outscores your first. You not only maximize your grade, but you maximize your learning, and more importantly, you maximize your ability to do well in the next module because they all build on each other. I had a major professor once that told me economics was like a snowball rolling downhill. Every time you learn something, the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. There is no problem. If you like that story, another story my professor told was that, actually this is according to a very famous economist by the name of Alfred Marshall, that economics is a puddle in which a novice can wade and an expert drown. Economics gets deep. And anyone who tries to get through economics at a surface level will make mistake after mistake after mistake, and more importantly, they won't know it's a mistake. Now, when we go through the evaluations, and I'll let you pause and look at the screen, it basically says what I'm likely to do in each of those scoring situations, and and we'll have some kind of intervention. But I will tell you right now, in modules 1, 2, and 3, or I'm sorry, 2, 3, and 4, the first three modules, I'm going to be much tighter than this. Here's a picture of the entire mastery level process. I will see you at the next lecture.